Okay. So I'm currently breastfeeding my third child, and I've learned a lot of things along the way. But this is my top 5 tips for breastfeeding exclusively. So my first tip, I feel like the most important tip, is water. Definitely drinking a lot of water, increasing your water intake, because the baby gets the first nutrients, they get the first, of everything that you take in. So if you're dehydrated, then you won't be able to make enough milk or produce enough milk. So I got myself one of these. It's super big. I think it's a gallon. Um, and it helps me to stay on track. I don't finish it all the time, every single day, but it helps me to be mindful, to drink a lot of water, to drink more water. That way I'm hydrated and I know I have enough fluid to produce the breast milk that I need to. My second tip is to put the baby to nurse often and on demand. So on demand means whenever they're showing cues that they're hungry, which could be sucking their fingers, smacking their lips, even if you're holding them and they start nuzzling or trying to rooting to get to the breast. So pretty much whenever they show cues to breastfeed, some people or some doctors will say, to have intervals, to wait every 3 hours or every 2 hours or whatever. But it's just like with you and I, sometimes we want a sandwich, or sometimes we just want a snack, or just chips, or sometimes we want water, sometimes we want soda. We eat and drink throughout the day multiple times, more than 3 times or more than every 3 hours. And so babies are the same way. Sometimes they want a snack, sometimes they want a meal, sometimes they want dessert. And so putting them to nurse often will help with your milk supply, will help increase your milk supply, and it's supply and demand. So as long as the baby is showing signs that they want to nurse and you put the baby to nurse, then your breast will make the milk that it needs to, because you're putting the baby to breast often. My third tip is skin to skin. So breastfeeding is a form of skin to skin, but also another way to do it skin to skin is like the kangaroo care, where you're completely naked, or like you're naked from the top up and the baby's naked and you're chest to chest, like bare chest to bare chest, and that helps the baby regulate temperature, and it helps the baby to smell you and get used to you, especially in the early days when you after you first given birth, and it releases hormones to allow your body to produce breast milk, and it helps you to feel closer to your baby, feel connected with your baby. And so it's a good way to increase milk supply and get that milk supply going and stimulated. The skin to skin, being actually like bare skin to bare skin. My fourth tip is to refrain from bottle feeding and pacifiers. Now, if you plan on bottle feeding, that may be something that you want to do or you want to introduce after you have established a good breastfeeding relationship with your child, or breastfeeding schedule. Because the thing is, with breast milk, the babies have to work to get the milk out of the breast, and with bottles they don't. Even the slower paced bottles, even like, say, I don't know, like a 0 or a 1, they still get the milk faster and easier with the bottle than they would breastfeeding. And sometimes babies prefer that. So if you introduce the bottle too soon, then the baby's like, well, why am I working so hard for the breast milk when I still can get breast milk from this bottle? And sometimes they can reject the breast and prefer the bottle. So that's one reason why they say to wait, if you want to introduce the bottles, to wait until breastfeeding is established. And then for pacifiers, they help the baby with the need to suck, but the breasts do the same thing. And so if you introduce the pacifier too early or too often, the baby can get mixed cues about hunger and sucking, because it's two different things. But the more that they suck, the more you'll produce, the breast milk that you're looking for. And once it's established, you won't really have to worry about that too much. So my tip would be to refrain from introducing bottles and pacifiers, artificial nipples too soon, and that can interfere with your breast supply. And then my fifth and final tip I feel like is really important is having a good and a strong support system. I know for me, my mom breastfed all of us. So when I had my first child, she was right there, and she was really instrumental in making sure that I knew, following the baby's cues and nursing often and frequently and all of that. But I think it's really important to have someone either that you personally know has breastfed, or it could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be whoever, just someone that you can go to, that you can ask questions, someone that you trust, someone that you're comfortable with discussing, breastfeeding. And also just making sure that, there's tips, there's like the lactation consultants and things like that for if you're running into any troubles with breastfeeding. But definitely having a good support system, someone that understands what you're trying to do and not discourage you, or not saying that you give up easy, but someone that's going to encourage you to, maybe you can't breastfeed, exclusively. Maybe you do have to use bottles or whatever, but someone that's there on your side, on your team, that understands what your either short-term goals are or long-term goals as far as breastfeeding goes, is someone to talk to. So that could be anyone. And also just getting the information for yourself, Googling some things, looking up some things, and just really not it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Obviously, fed is best, whether it's breast milk, straight from the breast or from the bottle, or even formula. Whatever way you decide to feed your baby is best. But those are just my 5 tips for breastfeeding exclusively and keeping your milk supply up.